Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Wednesday, October the 30th, 2024. Today I want to talk a little bit about the UK. I have been asked about the budget, so in the UK there is a budget speech in which the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who is the British Finance Minister, gives a speech, and it's about what the government plans on doing, in particular what they're going to do about tax. And so it's a big event in any British government, and of course this is the first budget speech of the Starmer government. Of course Keir Starmer won the election in January on July the 5th, 2024, and his Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, is going to give the budget speech. And so I thought I would look at the astrology of this budget and also in general what is happening in the UK at the moment. But before I look at the UK and the budget, I want to consider the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Wednesday, October the 30th, 2024. Just a reminder, if you enjoy this video, I would be very grateful if you were to like it. And if you're not subscribed and you enjoy this video, I would of course be super grateful if you were to subscribe. So anyway, let's look at what's going on today. So we have the moon in Libra. The moon continues to move through Libra, and there we have it. This is the chart for October the 30th, 2024, set for noon. There's the moon in Libra at 17:26 of the sign. So, moon in Libra, I suppose it's a sign that, a placement rather, that puts a great focus on harmony. Things need to be running smoothly. It's nice if things run smoothly. And this can relate to how we deal with other people. We don't want to upset anyone, do we, with Moon in Libra? We want everything to be calm. And in terms of what we say, I think to an extent we try to avoid sort of too much emotion, perhaps. I mean, that can be hard work because, the Sun is in Scorpio, Mercury is in Scorpio, Saturn's in Pisces, so we've still got a lot of planets in water signs. So it can be hard work for the moon in Libra to try to smooth things over, but to an extent, I think there can be a degree of success, especially as the moon is making a trine to Jupiter. That is a very pleasant aspect, the moon trine Jupiter, moon in Libra, trine Jupiter in Gemini. So in many respects, things should work quite well, and it's actually quite a lucky aspect. And yeah, it's not just that the moon is trine Jupiter, it's also trine Venus. So the moon is trining the two planets of good fortune. Venus is of course the lesser benefic, Jupiter is a greater benefic. The moon is trining those two. So in many respects that suggests that it might be a good day, but there are other things going on. For a start, Venus at 15 degrees 30 minutes Sagittarius is making a semi-square to Pluto. So there's Venus and there is Pluto. They're around 45 degrees apart. 45 degrees it's quite a stressful aspect. So Venus semi-square Pluto, it can be difficult to get on with people in certain ways. So, with Moon in Libra, sextile Venus, that suggests to me that we can have good relationships, provided we just keep it at a fairly sort of light level. We don't want to get too deeply into things. But Venus semi-square Pluto may encourage us to get into things a little bit too deeply and to take certain relationships too seriously. And perhaps that's something we shouldn't be doing. Venus, of course, also represents what we look like, presentation. And so we might get obsessed about presentation, and I'm not sure if that would be a particularly good thing. By the way, I should say my computer is making a lot of noise recently, and I apologize for that, but I need a new computer, and I will be getting a new computer, I think, within the next week. I think it's become a matter of urgency now. Anyway, I thought I just had to say that. Anyway, Venus semi-square Pluto, and is perhaps just a little bit too intense for some people's liking. And also Mercury. Mercury is at 25 Scorpio, and it is making an opposition aspect to Uranus. This Mercury opposition Uranus could be a little bit explosive, because Mercury is about talking, communicating. It's opposition Uranus. We might say things that cause a stir. Now, it might have a connection with Algol. I think the thing is that at the moment Uranus is quite close to the fixed star Algol. I mean, let me just see what the orb is on how close Uranus actually is to Algol. So Uranus is 34 arc minutes from Algol. It's close. It's around half a degree. I suppose it's not immediately conjunct Algol, though you could say that Mercury is going to be triggering that Uranus. So, I mean, I suppose when you think about world leaders, Benjamin Netanyahu, Donald Trump, they do have Mars at around 26 Leo. That Mercury opposition Uranus may have some impact on them. I don't think it's necessarily quite as immediate, but Trump, I suppose he has to be careful what he says. I suppose it doesn't seem to matter. I don't know, maybe he's better this time round. He's more considered, maybe, I don't know. But perhaps Trump has to be careful what he says. Maybe more than usual with Mercury opposition Uranus. But in general, regardless of politics, what we say can have an impact. Words are important. And I suppose on a positive side, Mercury opposition Uranus can give us sudden insights. We suddenly realize something. We thought things were fine, and then they're not. It suddenly hits us, and we want to do something about it. Then there is the moon moving into the Via Combusta. So the Via Combusta is the flaming path, the path between 15 Libra and 15 Scorpio. It's not an unusual event. Every month the moon moves through the Via Combusta, and it lasts for a sign. So 2.5 days, 2 or 3 days, the moon is there. But while the moon is in the Via Combusta, things can happen. Things can happen that we weren't necessarily expecting. And so we should always plan for an alternative way of doing things. And we shouldn't, because if we're set on a rigid course and something goes wrong, well, that can spoil things, can't it? And as far as the Via Combusta and when it happens, here's a chart actually for the moment the moon moves into, or not the moment, I've gone to, I think, to the nearest minute, that the moon goes into the Via Combusta. So you can see that the moon is exactly at 15 Libra. So the moon goes into the Via Combusta New York time at 7:04 a.m. this morning. If you're in the West Coast, in California, for example, or British Columbia, then that would be at 4:04 a.m. So if you're in the Americas, Via Combusta is pretty much a feature of all day, and it'll continue into tomorrow and the day after, and I'll be tracking it. Don't worry. So if you're in Europe, then sort of late morning towards lunchtime, the moon will move into the Via Combusta. If you're in Australia or New Zealand, then that's not going to happen until, I don't know, this evening sometime. So just be aware of that. I mean, don't panic about it, just because the moon does move. The moon is in the Via Combusta once a month, and it stays there for a few days, so it's not exactly unusual. But I think, as I'm doing daily forecasts, it's something that I should point out. Of course, don't forget to look at Mars and Pluto. Mars is getting really close to Pluto, the opposition of Pluto, getting closer and closer. It's nearly there. And so as Mars moves to the opposition of Pluto, the power struggle gets more and more intense. People get more and more worked up. They get more and more angry, particularly if there's an election going on. It's just interesting that Mars-Pluto opposition just becomes exact. It's sort of the beginning of next month. Well, I don't know, over the weekend. When does it come? So I should have remembered that. When does Mars-Pluto become exact? It's November the. That's something one should just know. But Mars-Pluto is. It's exact on Sunday, actually. So 2 days before the election, and I suppose that's when you've got the absolute sort of peak of the campaign. Now just a reminder in terms of where the moon is. So the moon New York time, 17 Scorpio. If you're in New York, that's a situation in New York. From a perspective of Australia or New Zealand or East Asia, the moon is at 10 degrees Libra. So actually the moon is at the beginning of the sign. Well, not really the beginning of the sign, but it is in a somewhat different position. I don't think there's going to be a huge difference between Australia and New Zealand and the Americas, though maybe that Moon-Jupiter trine that I was talking about, but I do think is fortunate, may be perhaps more of a feature of tomorrow if you're in Australia or New Zealand than today. So that is a possibility. But still, the Moon is in Libra, Jupiter is in Gemini. There's still a good relationship between the Moon and Jupiter. Now, turning to the heliocentric picture, and let's set up the chart from a heliocentric viewpoint. There we go. And so here's the chart set for today. Remember, this is putting the Sun at the centre of the solar system, where it should be, arguably. And you can see now that that Mars-Jupiter conjunction that I was going on and on about is breaking up. I don't think we can really feel that Mars-Jupiter conjunction anymore. We can still feel the Mars square Saturn. I mean, this Mars square Saturn has been around for some time, so some of that frustration with Mars square Saturn is still going to be very much present. You might feel things are just hard work. But on a positive note, Venus is moving to a trine to Jupiter. So heliocentric Venus in Aquarius is making a trine to heliocentric Jupiter in Gemini. And Venus trine Jupiter is, I would have said, something quite. It's quite fortunate. It's possibly quite good for relationships. It's a good balance because geocentrically, I mentioned that we have Venus semi-square Pluto, which can be a little bit intense, but heliocentrically, Venus trine Jupiter, there is a way to relate in a sort of meaningful and positive and optimistic way, and that's perhaps represented by Venus trine Jupiter. And also, I suppose, Venus can be the planet of money, so with Venus trine Jupiter, it may be the case that we can think about ways to improve our finances or do something with money. So I think that is quite optimistic. Venus trine Jupiter, and Mercury is trine the Earth. So Venus trine Jupiter and Mercury trine Earth that's, I think, also quite a good aspect. Mercury is the communication planet. Okay, we've got Mercury opposition Uranus, so that does put the emphasis on communication, perhaps in quite a crazy way. But then we've got Mercury trine Earth, which suggests that we can find ways to communicate and articulate ourselves in a way that makes sense, that is sort of down to earth and can be very reasonable. So that's the heliocentric picture, and what I want to do now is look at today from the perspective of the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Wednesday, October the 30th, 2024. Aries. Aries, you don't have to do things on your own. You can seek out other people's help. I think other people in many respects can be useful, and the situation is really sort of illustrated by the fact that the moon is in Libra, and it's actually making a sextile to Venus, and it's making a trine to Jupiter. So don't feel you have to do everything on your own. You can, to an extent, rely on other people to help you and to perhaps give you advice, and at the same time you have to ask, where is the good luck? Who has the good fortune? I mean, I'm not saying that today is unfortunate, but it just may be that in certain cases other people are luckier than you. And so if other people are luckier than you, there's no need to be jealous. You just have to take advantage of that luck. So that's why it might be a good idea to be with other people, to cooperate with other people, and just get some idea of what they can offer. Because if you try to do things on your own, you might start to feel a bit somewhat frustrated. On your own, it just may be difficult to make things happen at the pace you'd like it all to happen. So it's perhaps going to be important that you slow down to some extent, that you don't do anything that's totally focuses on you as an individual. But Aries, you do have a sense of what should be done and what can be done, and so perhaps you need to be the initiating force. You initiate things just a little bit, just to get things going, and then other people join in with what you're doing. And so I'm not telling you that you should just follow the crowd. That would not be the right thing to do. But you just have to be aware of the assistance that other people could give you if you were to give them the chance. Now, as far as relationships of all kinds, I think it can be a very good day with the moon making a trine to Jupiter, making a sextile to Venus. I think that if you give people a chance, if you're able to sort of get close to people, obviously you don't have to get too close to people, but perhaps closer to people. I don't think that would be a bad thing. So overall, Aries, I think it can be a very good day, but just don't try to do everything on your own. Taurus, you feel that things are a little bit heavy, that nothing is entirely straightforward. And one reason for that would be that Venus is your ruler and it's in Sagittarius. Venus in Sagittarius for Taurians can be a little bit difficult, because it does make you sort of perhaps focus on things that are a little bit intense, and you do tend to take things seriously. In fact, Taurians in general can take things seriously. Once they start engaging on something, they can be really serious, and they'll just want to see it through in a very focused kind of way. But with Venus in Sagittarius, I would have said that's going to be sort of more so. I think that perhaps you'll have an awareness of where things can lead, and you're wondering, is it a good idea for things to lead in a particular way? Do you really want to go in that direction? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But if you do make a decision to go in a particular direction, you understand that has definitely got consequences. And Venus is making a semi-square to Pluto. Pluto is an intense, transformative energy, and yet you do understand that things can't be taken lightly. Having said all that, I think that you don't have to come over as being an intense and serious person. In terms of how you occur to other people, we have the moon is sextile Venus. A very nice aspect, moon sextile Venus. Moon in Libra, sextile Venus. So that means that you can present yourself in the right way. You can attend. You can attend to the details that matter, and at the same time, there's something about you that is, in a way, quite harmonious. I don't think people are going to pick up on your intensity immediately. Maybe they'll never pick up on your intensity if you don't give them any cues. And also, from a heliocentric point of view, if we look at the heliocentric picture, we've got Venus trine Jupiter, and I think that Venus trine Jupiter does complement the geocentric moon sextile Venus. So with heliocentric Venus trine Jupiter, there's a sense in which you can relate very well to the world, and you can actually come over as quite an optimistic person, as the kind of person who's got interesting ideas, the kind of person that people can trust. But fundamentally, Taurus, you shouldn't feel that everything has to be done in a particular way. I mean, I understand, Taurus, that you are a fixed sign. You have ideas about what the way things should happen. But if you expect everything to go according to plan today, then you may be disappointed, because I think it's quite possible things don't go to plan. And you should instead be aware that there is a little bit of instability flying around the system, that things might not entirely work out as you expect, and that shouldn't be a problem. Again, provided you show a little bit of flexibility. Yeah, it can be difficult for Taurians sometimes to show some flexibility, but if you can show some flexibility, then I think you'll be able to handle whatever challenges come your way. And as I've suggested, I think that your social skills are very good, and you can come over as someone who is pleasant and receptive, and I think people are going to like you. But just don't take things too seriously, and don't feel that if you've got a plan you necessarily have to follow it through to the letter. Just a bit of give and take could make all the difference. Gemini, the main aspect today, as far as you're concerned, is an opposition between Mercury and Uranus. Of course, Mercury is your ruler. It's moving through Scorpio, and so with Mercury opposition Uranus, I think that there is a possibility that things happen that you weren't necessarily expecting. So don't expect just everything to go to plan, because actually it might not go to plan. And so you have to then ask, what actually could disrupt things. That's something you have to think about. There is something very disruptive about today, and the disruption might come from you yourself. You might do things which you perhaps weren't planning on doing, but you do it anyway, and it causes a real reaction. And I suppose, Gemini, you may have to think about what you're saying. Some of the things you say could be quite alarming. I mean, you didn't plan on being alarming, but it just happens. Or alternatively, Gemini, you might have ideas with Mercury opposition Uranus, and these ideas could change everything. You perhaps see things in a different way. You see things in a different way, and suddenly everything changes, and that can be quite dramatic. And I suppose, Gemini, you also have to think about your your routines and your rituals and whatever you do every day, what has become a part of your daily routine. And it just may be that in some respects there is a little bit of disruption that actually you hadn't planned on. You thought you'd sorted it all out, and then something happens. That something might be external. You see it, and it really shocks you or surprises you, and you may feel you have to start from scratch, and you don't know what other people are doing, and other people might change their plans, but it might be just you see things differently. And Geminis can have this dramatic change in enthusiasm. Peak enthusiasm for Geminis can be a dangerous time. You get really, really enthusiastic about something, and then you just say, no, not for me. You can see all the reasons why it's not going to work. Whereas 5 seconds ago, you saw all the reasons why it could work, why it was a really good idea, and suddenly you have a moment of absolute transformation, and everything changes, and you decide to perhaps give up on something. Don't give up on things necessarily. I mean, there may be temptations actually to give up on things with that Mercury opposition Uranus, or to just change your plans. But I would just avoid doing anything that is too dramatic. Now, on a more positive note, the moon is moving through Libra, and it is making a trine to Jupiter. And Jupiter's in Gemini, moon is in Libra, and that moon trine Jupiter it's a really creative, and it's about being able to really tune into what you can do. And there's something perhaps even about you that could be in some respects quite larger than life. Once you get enthusiastic about something, don't give up on it. Allow your enthusiasm to just continue. And sometimes when you're enthusiastic, you reach moments where you sort of doubt yourself and you want to stop, but just keep going if you possibly can, and just really start to see things in the best possible light. And you might be surprised what happens. So basically, Gemini, I think it can be a very good day. It can be an exciting day, but be careful about sudden inspirations, sudden ideas, sudden realizations. They may seem dramatic, Mercury opposition Uranus, but don't overreact. And I suppose the worst thing that can possibly happen today is you're doing something, it's working well, and you just give up on it. You just stop, because things aren't going 100% your way. You're feeling a little bit negative, and that's it, it's gone. So don't do anything too drastic, particularly if it is like giving up on something, thinking you can't do it, or whatever. So have confidence and be able to see things through to a completion as far as is possible. Cancer, it's a day, Cancer, that in many respects looks quite good, because the moon, which is of course your ruler, is making a sextile to Venus and is making a trine to Jupiter. So you have, I think, a lot of optimism, or you should have a lot of optimism. You can actually sort of believe that things can work out your way, and you just have this inner confidence. And it's an inner confidence that in some respects you don't really want to share with anyone. You just feel good. You feel confident. You feel that you're in the right place, and you feel that people can be trusted, and that you can be trusted. Well, people can be trusted. Your kind of people can be trusted. Not everyone can be trusted, but people who you understand. People who are close to you anyway. As far as strangers, no. I mean, that's perhaps not an area where trust can be extended to. And I suppose this is a reminder that in some respects today might be quite insular. You might feel that you don't really have to consider, or even need to consider, want to consider, should consider what's happening out there in a world that you're not entirely familiar with, or you don't feel you want to get familiar with. And so in some respects, Cancer, you might feel that it's best to deliberately restrict your horizons. You don't want to get involved with the unknown, because the stuff that is known, the stuff that you feel familiar with, is just fine. And that also sort of is boosted by the fact that the moon, your ruler, a planet that, I know it's a satellite, not a planet technically, but as in astrology one calls it a planet. But the moon is trine Jupiter. That gives you a feeling of confidence and the fact that maybe good luck is on your side. The fortunes are indeed fortune is definitely going your way. And moon is also sextile Venus. So moon sextile Venus is about just being able to do things your way, organize things your way, and there is just a general feeling of comfort, but don't let it be complacency. And there are things perhaps going on out there which you need to pay some attention to. You can't be completely separate from the outside world. And I would suggest that you at least keep tabs on what is going on, and you need to be informed. And it may be the case that there comes a point where you have to do something you maybe didn't really want to do, and that could be connected with the fact that Mercury is opposition Uranus. Mercury opposition Uranus does not directly impact you, but it does impact all of us, regardless of their sign. And it just may be that you hear something, or something happens which you have to attend to, that requires your presence. So I think you can do things your way. I think you can keep to yourself. You can keep to what you know and trust. I think that's okay. But just be ready to extend yourself, to go somewhere you perhaps hadn't planned on going to, if the need arises. And I think the reason why you should do it is not necessarily because you have to do it because of your own personal interests or your own personal survival or anything like that. It's just that there may be a certain obligation on your part to intervene. And I think you understand that obligation. But maybe nothing will happen. Maybe you can just do things your way, and you can stick to the company of people you know and trust, your family, and everything should be fine. Leo, you are, I think, able to give a fairly good account of yourself. I think that you know how to communicate. You know how to tell people who you are and what you want. And I think getting people to listen shouldn't be a problem. And I think, Leo, in general, you're going to know how to behave. You'll be able to understand whatever situation you're in, and you will be able to behave accordingly. And so that should give you the confidence to sort of move around, talk to different people. And I think that with the moon making a trine to Jupiter, you really can benefit through your conversation skills. You may not feel you can make good conversation, but I think you can. I think that you're going to be able to use whatever methods of communication are available to, and I think you're going to be able to use them very well. But it's always important to have different types of communication, not to be relying on one particular form, one particular way of communicating. I think that's important, because remember the moon is going into the Via Combusta. Okay, it to an extent depends where you are, but when the moon moves into a Via Combusta, if you're in the Americas, the moon will be in the Via Combusta by the early morning. In Europe, it will be sort of more towards lunchtime. Okay, Australia, New Zealand, that would be much later in the day, this evening. But the moon, that's where the moon is going. And when you've got the moon in the Via Combusta, that just does indicate that things can happen that you weren't perhaps planning on happening. And so in terms of the way you communicate and the way, if you're trying to get a message across, if you can't get a message across because there's I don't know, some communication failure, some technical failure, you've just got to be ready to communicate in a different way. And I think that is something you can do. So if you get blocked in one direction, then you might find an opportunity in another direction. And that's a way to go about it. And in general, Leo, I think you're going to be very good at presenting to people who you are, and everything about you will represent you. It's not just what you're saying. It's what you're wearing. It's how you're talking. It's your sense of timing. It's all about you. And I think that you can I think perhaps do that quite powerfully. And you can do it in such a way, actually, that you don't have to expose yourself to anything. You don't have to put yourself at risk. You can perhaps even just stay exactly where you are, but still present yourself in a powerful and dynamic way, and in a way that people are interested in. And one of the aspects happening today, arguably the main aspect happening today, is an opposition between Mercury and Uranus. And that Mercury opposition Uranus may indicate that you've got sort of powerful ideas brewing. These ideas are sort of bubbling away, and you're not being open about these ideas, at least to begin with, but they are starting to reveal themselves. And there may come a point where your ideas get so strong, your feelings about what things should be, your ideas about how things should be changed, they start to come to the surface, and people start to realize what you want and what you believe in. And it can happen quite suddenly. Maybe it's a situation where you keep quiet for a long period. You're not doing anything. You're not saying anything. You're not okay. I think you've got a lot to say, but perhaps you're not saying anything important. But then suddenly you realise that there is something important you want to say, and you say it, and it may cause quite a stir. And I think that people will take notice of you. So overall, Leo, I think it's a day when you can express yourself in a way that is quite powerful. I think that people are going to listen to you, and also I think you're going to be able to deliver your message in quite a pleasant way in most cases, unless, of course, you have this sudden sort of Mercury opposition Uranus realization that something has to be said. You can't help it anymore. You can't hold it back anymore, and you suddenly have to get people's attention. That could be quite dramatic. And of course, as a Leo, you do have a sense of drama, and sometimes you can actually enjoy being dramatic, particularly if you know that people aren't expecting it. Virgo, the main aspect today is, without doubt, an opposition between Mercury and Uranus. Of course, Mercury is Mercury is of course your ruler, and so with Mercury opposition Uranus, you can't expect everything to go to plan. Things can happen, and things can happen at many different levels, but it is Mercury. So Mercury, it's your ruler, but it's also the planet of communication. It's also the planet of news. It's the planet of realization. So when I say things happening, it may not be like huge events. It's just about how you respond to the information coming your way. And there may be things going on which really do surprise you. You'd expected things to happen in a particular way, and you sit up and you listen, and things aren't going as expected, and so you then have to respond to the situation. So I suppose, Virgo, you certainly can't expect things to go exactly your way. You have to have the ability to respond in a way which is I suppose quite flexible. Because if you're not flexible, then there could be trouble. But I think, Virgo, you can be flexible. You know, Virgo is a mutable sign. You can deal with a sudden change of circumstance, or a sudden change of opinion. I mean, your own opinion could change quickly, or someone else's opinion could change quickly. And yeah, people are going to be responding to facts, events, the news, in a way that is, I suppose, somewhat slightly exaggerated, and maybe they're just going to overreact. And you yourself don't want to overreact. I think that's quite important, and perhaps that's a way to take advantage of the situation with Mercury opposition Uranus. You know, it is Mercury, it's your Mercury, it's your ruler. And so maybe there will be a change of circumstance, or there'll be a piece of news or something like that happens, and other people can't really deal with it. They don't know what to do. But you will, in a way, perhaps take it in your stride. You might be slightly surprised, but I don't think your surprise and shock is going to last so very long, and you'll realize that actually maybe this is an opportunity. And perhaps you also could be dealing with a set of events which on the surface seem problematic, but if you actually analyze them, they're not quite as problematic as they seem to be. Now, as far as money is concerned, I don't know if money is relevant to you, but if money is relevant to you, well, you know, the moon is moving through Libra, and in the Virgo chart, the sign Libra can often have a connection with money, and the moon is making a trine to Jupiter, and it's making a sextile to Venus, and so those two aspects can emphasize money, and they can emphasize financial opportunity, or perhaps the way to understand money in a constructive sense. So if you're having to deal with money, not necessarily just for yourself, but perhaps for other people, or for some organization, or an employer, or for some other reason, you'll have a good sense of the way things are and the way things should be. And I think your understanding of what should be done with money is actually going to be quite good. And I think you're going to be quite keen. You're going to be quite a keen observer of what's happening financially, and you may actually stumble across some kind of financial opportunity, and that's possible. And so, you know, if you do see a possible way of making money, improving your financial situation, maybe improving someone else's financial situation, or improving an organization's financial organization, don't be dismissive, don't be too critical. Just consider the possibility that this may be something very real, a real opportunity to create financial improvement. And there may also be a sense in which it is a stroke of luck. Something happens which allows you to be in this position. So if that stroke of luck comes your way, don't be dismissive, because I think it could be something really very useful for you. And again, not just useful for you, but maybe useful for other people as well. Libra, the moon continues its movement through your sign, and the moon in Libra, it makes a sextile to Venus, and it makes a trine to Jupiter, which I think those two very nice aspects are very much to be welcomed. And with moon trine Jupiter, and I think that does give you a certain amount of luck. And if you have an open mind and you're imaginative, then sort of luck can come your way, and it may come in sort of in quite an unexpected form, something you hadn't really anticipated. But you may need a little bit of imagination. Luck may not, when luck comes your way, it may not be, I don't know, lit up in lights. You may have to perceive it, and you may have to look at it again. And something that perhaps you'd neglected it in the past, you'd thought it was just ordinary, just sort of a regular part of the scenery. You look at it again and you see, hold on, this is an opportunity that's just been sitting there, and now you have a chance to actually do something with it. And the moon in Libra is also, it's making a sextile to Venus. Venus is your ruler, and so moon sextile Venus trine Jupiter, that I think could be really quite sort of uplifting. And it may be that you can benefit from an unusual turn of events, and that is because the moon is moving into the Via Combusta. And so the moon Via Combusta is this part of the sky between 15 Libra and 15 Scorpio. It means the flaming path. And the Via Combusta is often seen in a negative sense, but there is a Libra side to the Via Combusta, late Libra, and there's a Scorpio side, early Scorpio. And generally speaking, the late Scorpio side is not as difficult as the late Libra side is not as difficult as the early Scorpio side. And sort of with the moon moving through late Libra, there might be some surprises, things happening you hadn't planned for, but that doesn't mean to say you can't take advantage of them. Maybe your first instinct is to think, oh no, what's happened? But then you look at it again, and actually you'll start to see that maybe things are turning your way. And if you can just show a little bit of imagination and just be open-minded, then you can actually start to see these opportunities unfolding. And you don't have to do it all alone, because at the moment, Libra, I think you have quite a good ability to interact and to make connections with other people. Of course, it'll help by the fact that you've got moon sextile Venus, but there are other things going on which do indicate that your ability to get on with people is quite good. And I suppose it's what also might be happening is that over the last couple of days, I suppose since the weekend, you had Venus square Saturn, and Venus square Saturn may have been a bit difficult, and Venus square Saturn had perhaps made you perhaps have your doubts about certain things, maybe also your doubts about certain people. But that Venus square Saturn is starting to separate, and now you can start to see things in a new way. And I should also say that heliocentrically, Venus is trine Jupiter, and so things are improving, things are getting better, and I think your ability to get on with people is much improved. And so I don't think you have to do things on your own. And it's just that if you can look at your social environment, you can just see that there are people out there who are there for you, and I think you have the capacity to sort of bring people together, to make connections. And I think that should really help you in terms of whatever you feel you need to do today, or indeed want to do today. Scorpio, you're perhaps getting over that sesquiquadrate between Mars and Saturn. So yesterday we had a sesquiquadrate between Mars and Saturn, which I think could have affected you in quite a big way. I mean, after all, Mars is your ruler, and so if it's sesquiquadrate Saturn, 135 degrees from Saturn, you just might have felt that things were just a little bit heavy, and you can still feel it, but I don't think it's quite so bad. I think you're feeling a certain sense that you do have more freedom and you do have more control, though there may be a tendency on your part to sort of over dramatize things, and that might be because Mars is moving towards an opposition of Pluto, slowly moving towards an opposition of Pluto. Now that Mars opposition Pluto becomes exact on Sunday, and I know it's only Wednesday, but because Mars is moving slowly, it takes a long time to get to that opposition, and as Mars moves towards it, you're feeling it, and you can really pick up on the tension in your environment. That tension is, I think, very real, and there may be a sense, Scorpio, that there are issues of control. Who is controlling who? And if you're a Scorpio, that is always an important question. And some Scorpios may be of the view that perhaps they don't have the advantage, that it is possible that it's someone else is pulling the strings. I mean, I don't think they are, but you might nonetheless have that feeling. And so you might want to go the extra mile to make sure that you really are in control. And I suppose that's okay, provided you don't exaggerate. You don't want to go over the top. You don't want to completely overreact, because that could be that could actually cause a lot of damage to yourself as well as to others. And maybe, Scorpio, you should just accept that it's a time when things have to be done in a way that is proper, and you understand that we do live in unstable times, and so you prepare for instability. You make sure that everything is in the right place. You perhaps assume that things are just going to be difficult, and you make that assumption, and you plan for the worst, but in reality the worst is unlikely to happen, and in that way you're able to sort of get through the day. But I don't think it need be a bad day. The moon is making a trine to Jupiter, and it's also making a sextile to Venus, and the things that work for you, the things that can actually benefit you, they are quite private. They are away from a public eye. They're things that only you know about, and it just may be that when you are alone or in a place that you feel comfortable in, where you don't have to engage with lots of different people, when you do have a certain amount of solitude, that's perhaps when your good luck starts to kick in. That's when you get a sense of not just a sense of control and a sense of oneness, but also a sense of what you can achieve. And so in your own quiet way, you can start to realize things, and indeed in your own quiet way, you might be able to get in touch with opportunities that you would not be able to find if, for example, you were in a high-profile, crowded situation. So Scorpio, do respect your own needs and your emotional needs, and you may have to respect your own need for quietness, and perhaps taking a fairly solitary approach. I mean, you don't have to be on your own. I mean, there are completely on your own. I think, the moon is sextile Venus. There are perhaps going to be a couple of people who can be a plus in your life, but you don't have to be a super social being today. Sagittarius just a reminder that Venus is starting to make an opposition to Jupiter. Now, this Venus-Jupiter opposition, I'm going to talk about it later. But it's, not today, but perhaps in a few days' time. But just a reminder that Venus is in Sagittarius, which is obviously your sign, and it's starting to make an opposition to Jupiter in Gemini. Now, this opposition is 5 degrees away. I think you're going to be barely feeling it, if at all. But this opposition perhaps needs to be managed. It sounds good, doesn't it? Venus, Jupiter, nice planets in opposition. But in opposition, they could cause a few problems. And I think that perhaps over the next few days, you need to be aware that you have a certain tendency to perhaps take things too far and be overindulgent. That might mean spending too much money, perhaps getting too emotional, or getting caught on whatever that luxury is. What's your number one luxury? Whatever it is, whether it's in the realm of entertainment or eating or drinking or the company you keep, whatever it is, it could be starting to take up a lot of your time. There could be temptations. So just be aware of that. And, as far as today is concerned, moon is in Libra, nice place for the moon if you're a Sagittarius, and the moon is making a trine to Jupiter. And so that moon trine Jupiter, Sagittarius, I think is going to probably be quite useful in terms of your social life and the people around you. I think that you can have good connections with the world out there, and I think that you're going to have a natural enthusiasm that people are going to really start to really appreciate. But don't get carried away. It's nice to be with people who appreciate you. It's nice to talk to people who appreciate you. But you have to ask, what are they actually appreciating? They're appreciating you as a social animal. They're not necessarily appreciating you as, say, an individual, as a creative person who has their own private path. Then that's not what they're appreciating. And so there's some danger that you get distracted by other people, and you get distracted in such a way that your own self and your own talents, your own creativity get forgotten. So put yourself first, even though there's a strong temptation not to do that, to sort of merge with other people's desires and whims. So it really is important that you are I suppose there's some sense of self-interest. A little bit of self-interest can go a long way. Now that moon trine Jupiter, it sounds nice, but there are other things going on, and I think that you may be aware that not everything is perfect. If you just listen to everyone else, you'd think everyone is perfect, but things are not perfect, and you can see that something just is not quite right, and it may be in the society in which you live, in your community, just something is wrong, and it kind of just hits you when you think about something on your own without other people distracting you. It just occurs to you, this is wrong, and you may also think that it may actually get worse. Again, I don't think I'm talking about anything to do with you and your own life and your vital interests. I'm talking about the world in which you live. And so the question is, what do you do about it? And you have to ask yourself, is it a situation where you can actually intervene and make it better? Or I suppose, can you reach in and sort of take out the evil, take out this sort of destructive force, whatever it might be? Maybe you feel you can do that, but it may be a situation where you feel you can't do that, where it's not possible, it's just too big. Now, that could just be that you just have to accept the world the way it is, or you might have to start to make plans, and maybe it's starting to occur to you in a long-term sense. I mean, I'm not talking about today, that it's perhaps a bad scene, or the scene, some element of the scene, whatever the scene means to you, is bad, and that it's a scene that you perhaps have to consider fading away from. It was reminding me, that was that a 60s phrase? Bad scene, cats, let's fade. You don't have to fade straight away, but perhaps you have to start thinking about how you are going to fade away and move to somewhere else, which is perhaps more supportive and doesn't have that sort of sense of insipid decay about it. But I'm not trying to make you paranoid. I must emphasize that. It's just about you and finding the best place for yourself. And sometimes the place you are isn't perfect. Capricorn, I think you do feel that there is a certain need here to be noticed. It's just not really a day for just sort of hiding away. I mean, you might like to. That might feel like the right thing to do. I mean, there's so much to work out. We do live in a complicated world, don't we? And so it might be best just to look away and not worry too much about what other people are doing. But you're just going to feel that somehow you have to be there. You have to be in the center of things. And you know, the moon is in Libra, the moon is trine Jupiter, so it's actually possible, Capricorn, that you can help organize things. Maybe there are people that just don't know what they're doing, they can't make up their own minds, they don't have the initiative, and you can be just the person to step in and ensure that everything works. And if you are working today, if you have a job or if you have a business, then with that moon trine Jupiter, I think that there seems to be no doubt that you can accomplish a great deal. You'll just have a natural feel for what needs to be done, and I think that people will listen to you, and people will really appreciate that you're taking the time to step in, sort something out, sort the problem out. But what you don't want to do is get into a situation where people are reliant on you, where they don't have any agency. And there is some danger in that, not just in terms of sort of your working environment or business in general. You know, if you've shown yourself to be competent and level-headed in the past, people might just think, well, you're the perfect person to sort everything out. You know, we need you to constantly be there. And you know, there may be certain people who just keep trying to get in touch with you because you're the one who is able to sort things out. I suppose the trouble is, Capricorn, but if you sort something out for someone on one occasion, the assumption is that you can sort things out on another occasion, and you can continually sort things out. And you may start to think that some people are becoming a little bit dependent on you, which is not really the way it should go. Now, possibly one of the main aspects coming up. Okay, it's not an aspect that's exact today, but just a reminder that Mars is making an opposition to Pluto. That Mars-Pluto opposition is actually exact on Sunday, but this opposition is getting closer and closer, and it perhaps reminds you that some people are difficult. I mean, it may be about people being dependent, constantly wanting something from you, and I think that you're going to be aware in terms of certain relationships that some people are just not doing you any good. That they have their demands, and you're expected to give in to these demands, and it makes you annoyed. And rather than get annoyed, I think perhaps you should just start to address the situation and make it clear what is acceptable and, of course, what is not acceptable. And you do have to think about yourself and your sacred space. Your sacred space does matter right now, and there is that space which is, I suppose, inviolable. It's something that's really important to you, and you don't want people breaking into that space or compromising that space. And so perhaps that Mars opposition Pluto is a reminder that you really have to look after your own interests. And yeah, some people can be extremely frustrating, and they can be annoying, and it might reach a stage where you just have to say something because you feel that there is no other choice. Aquarius. So yesterday we had Mars sesquiquadrate Saturn, and I think that Mars sesquiquadrate Saturn, that aspect, is still, I would have said, very much in operation. It hasn't gone away, and so there is a sense, Aquarius, that just some things are difficult. You think they can be done quickly, but they can't be done quickly. It just takes a long time, and I think to an extent you do find that annoying, and it just seems like it's sort of work for the sake of work, and things are taking longer than they should, and that shortcuts exist, but for some reason you're not able to take shortcuts, perhaps because other people don't want to take shortcuts. And there is a certain potential for aggravation there. On the other hand, the moon is making a trine to Jupiter, and the moon is in Libra. It's making a trine to Jupiter in Gemini, which, it's a very fortunate aspect, and it's in air signs. And of course, Aquarius, you are an air sign, so you're going to very much pick up on that moon trine Jupiter. And I think that moon trine Jupiter is going to sort of allow you to find a way of being yourself, of being able to express yourself in a way that is spontaneous and very creative, and people are going to will they respond well to you? They could respond well to you. I mean, some people can be really annoying, and they can be difficult, and they can just become a real problem. Other people are sympathetic, and they understand you, and they understand your priorities. So, perhaps you have to make a decision about which people you have in your life and which people you stay away from. I mean, if you want to stay away from people, it's not a permanent decision. It's just right now it might be that you need to perhaps be more careful than usual about who is around you. And Mercury is making an opposition to Uranus, and that Mercury opposition Uranus may be a way in which you can sort of assert yourself verbally and intellectually. Mercury is in Scorpio. Mercury in Scorpio is an important sign in the Aquarius chart. It's angular, It's at the top of the chart. Mercury is about you saying what's on your mind, you communicating freely. You also having ideas. Now, okay, you could say Mercury in Scorpio is not the Mercury in Scorpio is okay. It's not the most communicative place for Scorpio. Scorpio is not the most communicative place for Mercury, but it may be that there are long periods of silence, times where you don't say much, you don't say what's on your mind. But Mercury's opposition Uranus, something is being stirred up. Uranus is in Taurus. If Scorpio is a high-profile sign in the Aquarius chart, Taurus is a very low-profile sign, and so Uranus is about something brewing deep down, and that thing, it brews deep down, and then at a certain point it manifests, and then it makes the connection, Mercury opposition Uranus, and maybe this is the time when you have to say something. Or it just maybe, I suppose it could just be about where an idea has its moment, where the idea finally steps onto center stage, and you know what's important. And maybe you don't have to say anything about it, but if you want to communicate, and if you want to communicate something that's important, that really matters to you, then that Mercury-Uranus opposition gives you the opportunity, though the consequences may be quite large, because Mercury opposition Uranus is a very dynamic aspect. It demands attention, and maybe at a certain stage, Aquarius, you are going to demand attention. You have ideas, and those ideas might finally have come of age, and it's time to bring these ideas into the open. And some of these ideas, are dramatic. You know that things can't perhaps go on as they have done in the past, that something has to change. And perhaps, Aquarius, that's all it is, that you are just an agent of change, and this is a moment where you have to bring about change. And if other people don't like it, well, that's just too bad, because perhaps the moment has arrived. Pisces, you are not perhaps in the mood for doing anything particularly dramatic. Not really. You understand the way things are, and you understand also that things aren't entirely easy. I mean, they might seem easy on the surface, but you do understand that deep down it's not perfect, and that there's always something to be concerned about. And other people might not pick up on these concerns because they don't have your sensitivity, but you can feel it. You can feel that something is wrong, and when I say something is wrong, I must make it clear that I'm not talking about anything to do with you. It's just to do with the wider environment, and there's a sense of how do you respond to it? Because you are so sensitive. It's something other people can deal with because they just don't notice it, but you notice it, and I suppose that is a problem with being a Pisces, having that sensitivity, but that's kind of the way you are. And so if you feel that something is wrong, then just take note, don't panic, but also consider what your response is going to be, because there is a response. If you see that something is wrong in the world in which you live, then you're aware of that something is wrong for a reason, because perhaps you can do something to change it, because perhaps you can do something to protect yourself and others from something on the outside which is rotten, sort of spreading its rot. And so that's that is a bit difficult, But I think it's better to know about something rather than just to be in a state of complete willful ignorance. Willful ignorance, there's no excuse for willful ignorance. And I suppose there's a temptation to be willfully ignorant. Look away. I don't want to know. You could do that, I suppose, but that's not the right approach. And I think you do have to think about what is right. And if you look at things from a positive point of view, your awareness, which you are actually able to verbalize. Sometimes awareness, sometimes Pisces, you're aware of something, but you're not really able to verbalize it. You're not really able to put it into words. But I think now you can put it into words, and you can tell yourself about what's happening. And with the moon trine Jupiter, it may actually be that it's a situation that you could actually take advantage of. Because if you're in a situation where you know and other people don't know, well, surely, you do have the advantage. And it may be that you can use it to, I suppose you could use it in a completely selfish way, if you have the opportunity. But you could also use it to sort of boost your reputation and the trust people have in you. So in the first instance, people may not be willing to listen to whatever you have to say. They may not be willing to understand. But I think if you're persistent, and if you keep pushing the same message again and again, I think in the end, I do think that you will be understood. And talking about particular people, I mean, people are different, and some people just seem to be half asleep, or maybe fully asleep, but other people are actually very awake and very aware, and they are ready for something. And so, who are these people? And they may be oversensitive, but with Mercury opposition Uranus, there is a possibility that someone is capable of delivering a surprise. Perhaps someone does something you weren't expecting. Maybe you had assumed that someone was going to be sort of quiet and they weren't going to cause any trouble. They'd been quiet for a long time, days, weeks. You didn't expect anything, but suddenly it happens. Suddenly someone comes to life. So that's possible. Someone comes to life. Someone who had seemed to be in a little bit of a stupor, or maybe they just disappeared, they'd gone away, but they come back, and they come back full of energy and full of ideas, and maybe full of anger as well, but the kind of anger that is sort of verbally expressed. It's not, I don't think it's necessarily physical anger. So people are strange, and some people are oblivious, but other people are hypersensitive, and they've definitely got something to say. And I suppose handling the social landscape could be hard work, but in its own way it could actually be quite interesting. And that's it. Those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. And now I want to look at today from the viewpoint of the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Wednesday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 27, which is the corners of the mouth. And you can see this, the corners of the mouth. If you look at this, if you look at the hexagram, you can kind of see, I suppose the top line and the bottom line might be sort of the top and bottom lip, and then you've got sort of the sides of the mouth. So the corners of the mouth it's very much about what we say, and what we consume. And standard thing with the corners of the mouth is, if you want to understand someone, understand whether someone is going to be trusted, you always consider what they're eating, what nourishes them. And if someone is nourished by things that are wholesome, maybe that person is indeed wholesome. If someone is nourished by things that are not so wholesome, I don't know, for example, if someone is obsessed about money, if someone really keeps talking about money, seems to be very concerned about money, that's what nourishes them. And then you have to make a decision about whether or not you want to trust this person. So there's also a sense with the corners of the mouth, there is a view that it represents bulging cheeks. And so there is a certain danger here that we take on too much. And, if we do consume too much, we're going to get indigestion. We can't consume it all, and we're overwhelmed by it. And we need to finish what we're doing before moving on to the next stage. So, but what nourishes us is perhaps the key point here. And it does depend on where the moving line is, or moving lines. In this case, there is one moving line, and it's the third line from the bottom. Now, very often, the third line from the bottom is difficult, and this is indeed the case. And there is a danger here that we are being nourished by the wrong things. There are things we're engaging in, we're indulging ourselves with, that actually aren't particularly healthy. They're not actually doing us any good. We think we think that we are taking in nutrition, but we're not. And that's quite a tough message. So perhaps I need to ask you, what are you doing right now that makes you feel good? Now, I'm not talking about your whole life, but is there anything you're doing right now that you're feeling good about, that maybe it's not nourishing you in the way you think it is? Maybe it's doing the opposite, and it's keeping you still. It's preventing you from making progress. And so do consider right now what is making you happy, what you're putting your energy into, what you think is important, right now. And it just may be that you've got it all wrong, that you've been chasing the wrong thing. And if you're not nourishing yourself properly, then that, of course, is not very good for the whole system. But I must make it clear, I'm almost certainly not talking about health and your physical health. Though I suppose, I suppose maybe if over the last couple of days you've just been eating a load of junk food, is that possible? I mean, what have you been eating over the last couple of days? Yeah, if there's been a lot of convenience food, have you been, taking things which have been not non-nourishing, smoking cigarettes, recreational drugs, whatever you're consuming, maybe literal consumption, but whatever you're doing, it just hasn't been helping, and this is going to cause a delay, and you need to perhaps stop what you're doing. In fact, the I Ching goes so far as to say you should stop what you're doing for 10 years, no action for 10 years, because and I think maybe the reason that the I Ching is saying 10 years, and we can't possibly talk about 10 years, this is just a daily reading. It may be that it's quite fundamental that some of us have been nourishing ourselves in a way that is not right, that is not really nourishing. It's fake nourishment, and it may be so fundamental that it's actually going to take a long time to sort out. Hence this concept of 10 years, doing nothing for 10 years to get ourselves and our spirit and our body back into sync. But this is a reading for 10 for today, so maybe 10 years. It's more it's more like 10 hours, isn't it? Because it's a short-term reading, but just consider the possibility that you have got something wrong here in terms of nourishment, spiritual nourishment, what you enjoy, whatever. But it's not my job to preach. I'm just telling you what the I Ching says. It's my understanding of what the I Ching is saying. Now, this hexagram does move because we have a moving line, and it moves to hexagram 22, which is just grace. It's a very harmless hexagram. It's all about not taking action, but perhaps focusing on surface appearances, just calming things down and making sure that everything can perhaps return to normal. And the surface appearances matter. How we present ourselves to other people, how we just glide through life, and just making sure that we do things properly. And the previous hexagram 27, the corners of the mouth, there was something not very graceful about it, particularly if you see the hexagram 27 like Greg Winkup saw it as being the bulging of the cheeks, because he sees it not as I think he sees it as a mouth, but his image is of a hamster that has eaten too much, and that is not a very, which still it hasn't swallowed yet. It's just its cheeks are bulging with whatever hamsters eat, and that's not very graceful. And so perhaps there's a hint there, but some of our concerns about how we've been nourishing ourselves has just not been good, and it just hasn't even looked good. And so grace means perhaps we start off by looking at surface appearances and how we seem to other people, and then we sort of take it from there. And that's I Ching. I'm sorry about this I Ching was a little bit negative, and probably maybe it's inappropriate. I don't know obviously what your personal circumstances are, but maybe there's a kernel of truth in there somewhere. I don't know, but as I said, I'm not here to preach or to suggest that there's a problem where none exists, but I'm just reporting what the I Ching seem to be saying. So let me now look at the UK. And today there is a budget, and I'm not saying that I'm going to be able to really say anything particularly useful about the budget, but the budget is my starting point. I mean, I will be looking a little bit about the UK in general here, and King Charles and so on. I don't think I'm going to be saying anything particularly earth-shattering in this 15-20 minutes, in the next 15-20 minutes. So the budget, as I understand it, today, Wednesday, October the 30th, I believe the budget speech starts at 12:30. At least that's my understanding. If I got that wrong, I'm sorry. So here is the budget. So here is the scheduled start for the budget speech. And you can see that this budget is certainly getting a lot of attention. I mean, I've looked at some of the comments. I think someone commented from the UK saying they're worried about the budget and wanted me to sort of look at the chart of the budget, because the budget could have an impact on on people. Certain taxes could go up. I think there's been talk of inheritance tax going up, capital gains tax going up. I don't know about income tax. The question is, are there going to be any surprises or shocks and so forth? So the budget starts with the moon at 15 degrees 42 Libra. So the moon is just going into the Via Combusta. This is sort of London time. And so with the moon moving into Via Combusta, there's always scope there for things happening that people weren't expecting. And of course, people getting reactions they weren't expecting. So the Chancellor of the Exchequer, she makes the budget speech, and she doesn't fully know what the reaction is going to be. And so there's Mercury opposition Uranus, with the Moon moving into the Via Combustor. Not to mention we've got Pluto in the first house, if you take the Placidus house system, Mars in the seventh. So there is certainly a sense of tension about that. That something, that we do get a sense maybe of something perhaps unexpected. Now the Moon is just finishing making a sextile to Venus. I mean, that's a bit of a shame. It would have been nicer if the Moon was applying to a sextile of Venus. In fact, it's not. It's separating from that sextile of Venus. And so the Moon, having made that sextile of Venus, is its next aspect is a trine to Jupiter. Now, I suppose, it's the way with these videos is that, I'm often critical of governments. I suppose I'm critical of, I go on and on about criticizing the US and Starmer and so forth. But the Moon is making a trine to Jupiter. I know one might want to say, oh, this budget is going to be a disaster, the response is going to be terrible and whatever. But the Moon is making a trine to Jupiter, having made the sextile to Venus. So, from the perspective of the government, okay, in longer term, this budget might cause issues, but in the shorter term, I don't think this government is going to regard this budget as necessarily being a big disaster for itself. And of course, the Chancellor of the Exchequer is Rachel Reeves. So Rachel Reeves, here's Rachel Reeves. She is I think from that chart, she's quite a serious person. I haven't looked at her bio. I don't really know much about her. I do know that she studied politics, philosophy, and economics at Oxford. She did a master's degree in economics at London School of Economics. So she's a clever woman. I think she won a chess championship when she was a teenager. And she's a lifelong member of the Labour Party. She joined the Labour Party at the age of 16. And, the seriousness in this chart, I don't know what time she was born, but she definitely has the Moon in Virgo, that's for sure. And the Moon in Virgo making a conjunction to Saturn. And so Virgo is a sign that I think one can often associate with socialism, and in the British context with the Labour Party. Keir Starmer is a Virgo. Virgo is the service sign. It should be the sign of sort of ordinary working people, not being concerned about sort of injustice. Now, you could say that the Labour Party is a party of the elites. I don't know that, but it's people who are the elite, the rich elites tend to support the Labour Party. You could say that, but I think that does have its sort of working class roots, even if the Labour Party has completely forgotten about those roots. But that Moon conjunct Saturn it's a very serious, hard-working aspect, and she's also got Venus in Capricorn, and so for someone who is Chancellor of the Exchequer, I would have said that's quite good. If you're a Chancellor of the Exchequer, it's a tough position. You're not going to, you're very often going to lose popularity if you're Chancellor of the Exchequer, because you do have to make tough decisions about the economy. But she's got Venus trine Saturn, Moon trine Venus. So for her position, I think that works very well. I'm not saying she's going to be a successful Chancellor of the Exchequer. Again, I don't have her time of birth. And, in the end, what happens to the British economy is going to be about larger events. Of course, the Labour Party is in real trouble at the moment, even though they've just taken power. But I suppose if they're able to sort the economy in the next couple of years, everything will be fine. So she does have an important job, and she has a load of planets in Aquarius, doesn't she? She has Mars in Aquarius, 18 Aquarius. She has Sun at 24 Aquarius. She's got Mercury at 27 Aquarius, and so. Again, having those three planets might be quite useful if you're a Chancellor of the Exchequer in Aquarius, because if you've got these planets in Aquarius, you do need a certain amount of objectivity, don't you? You have got to make economic decisions which are going to affect the country, and you know that people are going to suffer whatever you do. And I suppose you could say with Aquarius, that's something that you've just got to accept it. That's the way it goes. I should make it clear. I understand that a lot of people watching this video from the UK are very sort of critical of the British government, but I just feel that what I'm doing is that I'm just looking at the chart as I see it. I'm just trying. I'm trying to be as objective as I can. But a problem perhaps she has is that she does not have any planets in water unless you count Uranus and Scorpio. Uranus is a transpersonal planet. So if you're a politician and you don't have planets in water, you have to be careful. Now, Tony Blair, very successful British politician, didn't have any planets. Certainly he had no personal or social planets in water. There was a real deficit in water, but he was successful. But still, Tony Blair aside, there may be a certain sense in which she doesn't really understand, what makes the British people tick, and that might be reflected in her budget, even if the budget itself, short term, doesn't cause too much upset. I think the budget will cause a certain amount of upset because of that Mercury opposition Uranus. That is something that people don't want to hear, Mercury opposition Uranus. It is a surprise, and the moon is going into the Via Combusta. So in terms of what is happening in Rachel Reeves's chart when she delivers the budget speech, so she has her Mercury at 27 Aquarius. So Mercury is starting to make a square to her Mercury. So you can see her nervousness here, and also she's got this Mercury opposition Uranus is hitting her Mercury. Now it's not exact, but over the next couple of days, I suppose, the budget has to be defended, and I think that is perhaps going to be hard work for her. And, I suppose we're looking at it on a sort of a slightly longer term perspective. Look at Neptune. This is interesting. Neptune is at 2732 Pisces. So Neptune is exactly semi-sextile her Mercury. Now, transiting semi-sextiles is something that we don't often look at, but if someone is giving a budget speech and they've got Neptune semi-sextile their Mercury, that could be a red flag. That somehow she doesn't fully know what's going on. She knows what's going on in a factual sense. As I said, she's a very clever woman. The facts, the details, she's got all that, but she doesn't have any water in her chart. With Neptune semi-sextile her Mercury, there just could be things that there should certain nuances in that budget that she doesn't fully understand, and I think that is certainly a possibility. And of course, Uranus is going retrograde at 2558. So Uranus is quite close to her Sun Mercury midpoint. Uranus is going to go back. She's got her Sun is at 2411. So Uranus will be in mid-December she'll have Uranus square her sun, and then next year she's going to have Uranus will go stationary direct, and it will just go through that. It will be hitting Sun and Mercury again and again. So, yeah, I mean, it may be that short term, perhaps the budget is okay, but there seem to be certain nuances that she doesn't fully understand or get, perhaps, and I think that may come about because she has a lack of water in her chart. Now, I'm not going to show the chart, but one sort of perhaps fortunate thing one might want to say about her chart is that if you look at her chart, I mean, I'm not going to do a separate chart. If you look at her chart, she's got Jupiter here. Jupiter's at 1 degree Leo, and she's got the North Node at 17 Virgo. So you can see that Jupiter and the North Node are approximately 46 degrees apart. And she's 45 years old. And by solar arc direction, if you do the solar arc directions, you see that solar arc directed Jupiter is moving onto her North Node. And that says something about the budget speech, and this is something she has to do. It's the right thing for her to do at this moment. So that's Rachel Reeves' horoscope and the budget. I think that I think there are going to be shocks in the budget. Things what people weren't expecting. The moon is going to a trine of Jupiter. Maybe the government, maybe short term the government will think it's fine. But I think that with that Neptune semi-sextile Mercury, I just think there are certain nuances that Rachel Reeves, regardless of what her performance is like in the House of Commons, that she has, I suppose it's being a budget speech. I suppose you're going through a load of details. It's not where you have to be a great orator. I don't think the budget speech. You just have to tell people what you're going to be doing, and as far as what's happening in England is concerned, just a reminder, it's not sort of moving perhaps a little bit away from the budget speech. And so remember with England that we've got this Venus, we've got Mars opposition Pluto, so is happening. And I've gone for England because it's, this is a 1066 chart, and I regard the 1066 chart as perhaps being important for the whole of the UK. And Pluto is at 2943, so Pluto now is getting really close to Britain's Venus, and Mars is about to make the opposition to Venus. So this is the Mars opposition Pluto on Britain's Venus. Venus could be about the country's money and about how it sees its money. And as Mars opposition Pluto, perhaps this budget speech is a shock to the country, and that may be how it's seen. Or it may say something else about what's happening to the UK. Venus represents women in the country. Venus represents Catherine. Perhaps we have to see over the next week or two what we're picking up from Catherine, because I suppose she's the woman in the country that gets the most attention. Although Venus represents women, obviously, and Rachel Reeves is a female Chancellor of the Exchequer. She is the first ever female Chancellor of the Exchequer. So Venus, assuming your time is right, I don't know, it doesn't actually need the time to be right, but Venus could be the Chancellor of the Exchequer, a woman in the public eye, and Pluto is opposition Venus, Mars is opposition Venus. So, and of course I suppose she has Rachel Reeves does have Venus in Capricorn, and so it could be that this speech, for her personally, her politically, it may be a problem, and it may be the aftershocks of this speech, maybe over the next week or two, may actually be quite undermining for her. Remembering, she's got those Aquarius planets, the Sun, Mercury, and Aquarius, and Saturn is Uranus is going to be hitting them. And while I'm at it, I should probably say something about Charles III, King Charles III. See if there's anything going on that's worthy of mention. Yes. Now, there's one thing I did want to say about Charles is that Mars is about to move into Leo, and so Mars, when it moves into Leo, will make a square to his moon, and Mars goes stationary direct at around 6 Leo. It goes stationary direct on his ascendant, and I mean his ascendant is at 5 Leo. He's got Mars stationary on his ascendant, and it's going to be sextile his Mercury. So in terms of King Charles, I think that Mars moving into Leo could be quite difficult for him, and perhaps we have to look at what's happening around December the 6th, in the run up to December the 6th, when Mars goes stationary direct. And interestingly, he's got his ascendant at 5 degrees 24 Leo. His wife Camilla, she's got her ascendant at 4 degrees 54. So they've both got Mars crossing their ascendant over the next 6 weeks, and so perhaps that's something we need to look at. But I mean, I'll be looking at their charts again. But I thought while I was at it, I thought I should just talk about Charles and Camilla. I mean, I will also be talking about the new Conservative leader. I don't think that gets announced next week. I think it seems to be likely to be Kemi Badenoch. And she's a Capricorn, but I'll be looking at Kemi Badenoch's horoscope. Finally, Keir Starmer, he's had his budget. I don't think one interesting thing about Keir Starmer. Oh, of course, but look at Mars. Mars goes stationary retrograde opposition Keir Starmer's Saturn, and that might be interesting. I think Mars goes stationary direct, and that's about 610 Leo, and so he's got his Saturn at 551 Aquarius. So perhaps that's the aftershock of the budget. And if you just a quick comparison, what does Rachel Reeves, what's the impact of her on Keir Starmer? And her Saturn is at 1149 Virgo on Keir Starmer's Sun, also on his Pluto. I think that might be a problem here. Remember, Saturn goes stationary direct at around, I think, 12 Virgo. So Saturn goes, 12 Pisces. So Saturn is stationary direct opposition Rachel Reeves' Saturn, fairly close to Keir Starmer's Sun. And perhaps Rachel Reeves's ideas about money as Chancellor of the Exchequer, she lives next door to him. Her address is number 11 Downing Street. His address is number 10 Downing Street. So they can't really get away from each other, can they? And so her Saturn on his Sun, something about her and money and what she feels she wants to do with the country's money and the country's economy. In the end, there may be a bit of a clash. We're not perhaps going to be able to see it, but maybe in the immediate aftermath of the budget, with Saturn going stationary direct, we may see a bit of a. We may not ever see it, but under the surface there may be some tension there, and it may be that some levels Rachel Reeves is what her views are. She's somehow not in keeping with what Keir Starmer wants. Anyway, those are some thoughts on the UK. I'm going to be returning to the UK very soon when the Conservatives get their new leader. But for the moment, that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description. So thanks again for watching, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.